And good morning, everyone. 7:08 a.m. here on KFYO Mornings. 36 degrees as you arise today on this first day of February. It's a Thursday. 55 is the forecast high today. And in our studio this morning, we have Miguel Levario, who is a candidate, a Democratic candidate for District 19.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Don't forget a professor at Texas Tech.
Yes, an associate professor at Texas Tech.
With a PhD.
Yes.
So this could be the most educated person that we've had run for office.
Yeah, it cost me enough money.
Yeah, I'll bet it did. Well, Miguel, we're glad you're here. Our audience always interested in the topics of the day. Tell us about yourself. I know off mic you were saying you're an El Paso boy.
Yes, sir. I was born and raised in El Paso, and most of my family still live there. But I've been living in Lubbock for over 10 years now. My wife and my two kids. My two kids were born here in Lubbock, and we consider Lubbock home. What brought me here was Texas Tech, and I'm very fortunate to have that opportunity, and we've been loving it ever since.
Yeah, I say every morning when I wake up, I'm thankful that I live in Texas. And then again, I'm more thankful that I live in Lubbock, Texas.
Yes,
this is a great place.
It is, and I tell people, it really sucks you in a good way, in the sense that it's a good place to raise a family. It's a good place to live. We were just talking off mic about the struggles of living in Austin, and we certainly don't have those kinds of struggles here in Lubbock. So
very true. Well, District 19 is a big district.
Yes, it is.
I know it goes down to Abilene. Remind us. What are the boundaries of District
19? That's a good question, and I like to tell people we kind of go in four different directions. We go as far north as Plainview, which is not too far north from Lubbock. We go as far west as Seminole, as one of the larger towns out there. We also go to Muleshoe, which is a little bit northwest. But I think that we look at Abilene as sort of an anchor in the sense of how south we go. Also in Big Spring, we cannot ignore Big Spring out in the south west part of the district, and we go as far east as Graham, Texas, which is about, I believe, an hour south of Wichita Falls. Yeah. So it's a big district, but I always tell people it could be a lot worse. It could be Will Hurd's district that goes from El Paso to San Antonio, and I'm thankful I'm not in that district.
Well, this is Texas.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We have Texas miles here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Everything is in miles here. Very different than other states. Well, anyway, of course, you're running against Jodey Arrington.
So
yes.
What made you decide to run for Congress?
That's a good question, and that's one that I get quite often. There's a couple of things. I've always been an active member of my community here in Lubbock, and so the idea of serving my community in this capacity came up when several leaders that I've been associated with asked me to consider it. And I was very honored and humbled that they would even think of me as somebody who could serve as a leader and as a representative in Congress. And after many talks with my wife and of course with the university, we felt that this was a good way to serve my community. That's how we look at it, and that's basically the approach that we're taking, is that this is an act of serving my community and doing something that can better help my neighbors and my friends here in Lubbock.
Well, tell me, on the political scale, on the spectrum, are you more toward the middle, the left, the right?
I think that when we look at it, I'm a researcher. I've been trained to be a researcher and an educator. So I tend to view myself as a way of a person who tries to understand and view issues through research. I don't. Being from the border itself, I don't even identify with labels too much. We feel like we're people who understand, who try to understand the context of certain things, and I feel that we are that I myself am a person who tries to look at things in a way that is very pragmatic, but also understanding context. So I wouldn't say I'm far this or far that. I think I'm more of a person who just looks at issues and tries to understand them as well as possible.
So you've written a book
yes, sir.
on, and also working on a book, I think, and they have to deal with the border,
yes,
border security and whatnot. So let me ask you this right now. Something that's really big in the news is building a wall. Do you think the southern border needs a wall?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think it does. We have to understand too that this is where we talk about context. Towards the end of the Obama administration, we had probably a more secure border than we've ever had in the history of the U.S.-Mexico border, and talking about since 1848. And what I mean by that is that you had a basically negative zero net migration at the end of the Obama administration, which basically hasn't happened in ever. So what the current administration has inherited is essentially the safest border we've ever had. Obama was known as the deporter in chief, and he was deporting more people than his predecessors. So I think that what we need to understand when we look at the border is that it's also, we can't look at migration, national security, and even the drug war or even the drug issue as a consolidated and comprehensive issue. I think that there are separate issues because we've always depended on migration. We've always needed an open border to an extent when it comes to the economy, when we look at the coming of goods and the outgoing of goods. And we've needed people. I mean, the United States, from the very beginning, has been an open border, to be quite honest with you, because your gentleman farmers weren't going to farm your Thomas Jeffersons weren't going to go and pick up a hoe and work on the farm. They needed people to work on them. So when you have this situation, I think you need people that we need migration, and we need goods to come in and out of the country because we are a global market. But of course, as a nation state, we also need to secure our borders, and that is an important issue, and that's one that I think that we've always maintained for our whole history.
Well, we've about a minute or so, and we'll take a break. But this will be a good time. I was commenting to you about you have a very nice website.
Thank you.
And this will be an opportunity to let people know what it is, because they could go and learn a lot about you on this site.
Very much so. It's levarioforcongress.com, Levario for Congress, FORCONGRESS.com.
So there you have it. Go and take a look at it. And we're going to go ahead and take a break right now. We'll come back and we'll talk about some of the most dominant issues that are concerning people here in West Texas.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about
this break.
that.
We'll be back with more of Miguel Levario, Democrat for Congress, after this. News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM. We are KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. We're broadcasting from the Thacker Jewelry Studios. View the custom collection at 6120 82nd Street in Lubbock.
There's a lot of agriculture news going on. There's an ag bill coming up, but also the renegotiation of NAFTA.
Yeah.
So how do you see our trade agreements working? And in Texas especially, that's something a lot of people are worried about.
Very much so, and we have to be worried about that, because as we look at, we're only second to California when it comes to the economic and to a degree the social impact of farming here in Texas, and especially here in West Texas. When you have a situation where the president, for example, is threatening to pull out of agreements, these particular trade agreements, you have to really think about that, because when you talk about Mexico and Canada, there are top trading partners, and our cotton producers here in Lubbock, for example, trade with foreign countries. We send our cotton to China. Let's just be honest about it. So we need trade agreements in order for our farmers to be profitable. And when you start threatening these particular agreements, it becomes very problematic, and it does affect our local and our national economy. So when we look at ag is an important issue, and I think that when we talk about the Farm Bill, for example, it is important to protect our farmers. And I tell people, and I talk to people across the district, and one of the most consistent things you hear is that our farmers are dealing with a set of circumstances that most people don't, and that's Mother Nature. So when we talk about these insurances or these subsidies or whatever they may be, it's for them to protect them from things that we cannot control, which is Mother Nature. And that's what's important about this Farm Bill and this discussion about the Farm Bill. But we also have to consider as well, on top of that, is protecting the longevity of our farmers. And so I think when we have this discussion, we can't just be thinking and talking in a short-term kind of way. I think we need to think about what other ways that we can support our farmers to provide longevity, whether it's, dealing with the water issue. I mean, that's very, very basic, but yet it's a very important issue because, quite frankly, out here in West Texas, we don't have a lot of water, and if we're not careful with it, we're going to run out of it, in the next 50 years or so. So we have to think about that, and I think that we have to provide plans and policies that will provide our farmers to adjust to these changes.
Yeah. So another big thing is healthcare, and so healthcare. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of improvement that can be made in healthcare.
Very much so.
What are some of the ideas that you've had as far as trying to improve what we have right now?
One of the things that we've been hearing across the district is that people are very, very concerned about healthcare, in large part because we are a rural district, and a rural district that depends a lot on government support, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid, for example. So those sorts of programs, when you talk about cuts to those programs, they have a direct impact in our local economy and our local healthcare. I mean, UMC is very much an institution that uses funding from Medicaid and Medicare to not only provide service, but also to provide unique services that are, because, here in Lubbock, for example, because we are a medical hub, we service people from East New Mexico, and rural areas that are, they can't go to Albuquerque, for example, or even El Paso, where where I was born. They come here. So they need a lot of support from the government, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid, to provide those services. And you look at our rural hospitals like Garza County, for example, and Post, who depend a lot on servicing people who are underserviced and depend on these government programs. So when we talk about healthcare, they're very much concerned about what kind of cuts and then what kind of plans do we have, in place to support those types of services. So yes, I mean, we need to have understand here in District 19 that we are a rural district, and there are people who depend on services that are supported by the government.
But nationally, do you have any ideas of kind of how that system could be fixed?
Yeah, I think so. I think nationally what we've seen is that, first of all, we're not going to go backwards. We've seen that with the continuous attempts by the controlling party and their failed attempts to upend the Affordable Care Act. I think the American people are saying, we can't go backwards. We can't go back where we were before the Affordable Care Act. So I think that what people are saying is that we need health care that is going to be affordable. I mean, we know we have quality health care here in the United States. There's no question about that, regardless of what party you're with. It's a matter of, can you afford that quality health care?
Yeah, I think you have hit it. You have hit the nail squarely up on the head.
Yes, I'm employed and fully employed, and my wife is finishing nursing school currently, and she'll be gainfully employed as well. But at the same time, I mean, can we afford to get sick? That's a question for everybody, regardless of what kind of socioeconomic position you're in. I mean, can we afford it? Unless you're in the upper echelon, then you're like, I can afford anything. But for many of us, it's a matter of, can I afford to get sick? And we all struggle with that. So I think that's something that we need to consider as we move on, whether it's we move to improve the Affordable Care Act or we move beyond the Affordable Care Act. That's the basic question we have to answer. Mm-hmm. Can we afford it? And is it going to be affordable? And is it going to be still maintain that quality that we expect here in the United States? I mean, I listened to a commercial on one of the podcasts I listened to. Stanford, has a new, children's hospital, and they're saying, it's on the best campus, on the best. It's like, yeah, but I always ask myself, it's like, well, I mean, could I afford to go there?
True enough. Well, Miguel, we have probably less than a couple of minutes left, and we always want to give folks like you an opportunity for you to give us your elevator speech about why maybe the people should vote for you.
Well, I think it's an important time for us. I mean, one of the core principles of our campaign is that we're a community-centered campaign. I believe that we're looking at people and saying what voice do they have, and I think that it's important to understand that our campaign is more about people over party. And I think that's what you have to understand. And me being a non-politician, me being a professor, an educator, a husband, a father, puts me in the right position to actually consider that. Because you know what? This is about community service. This is about how do I better serve my community and make it better than where I left it. So that's how we're gaining. That's how we're putting it.
Thank you so much for coming out and being with us and kind of educating our population, our audience this morning. We will be back after this.